2020 in March was the last time we were here for a presentation. So I am so excited. Even though we didn't meet in person, we did a lot of stuff over the last 2 years. We did over 30 online Zoom presentations, much like what you're going to see tonight, but we were able to reach people all over the country. We brought in speakers from all over the country, people we would never even have here. So I personally love Zoom, so we might kind of mix it up a little bit.
Is this being Zoomed tonight?
This is actually being recorded, so people can watch it. We still haven't got the whole Zoom in-person thing down yet, but we're hoping to do that so more people can join in. And even though people weren't meeting in person, the society itself did a lot over the past 2 years. They launched a beautiful new website, which I hope you can all take a look at. ScituateHistoricalSociety.org. We had concerts at the Lawson Tower. We lit Lawson Tower. They actually this year were able to have the first annual dinner in 2 years as well, which was very exciting. And we're very excited. A few nights ago, the residents of Scituate voted the CPC funds for the restoration of the lighthouse. Anybody out there who's watching this tomorrow, thank you for voting for that. So we're very excited. We've got some great things coming up the rest of the year. Some will be live, some will be via Zoom. And I think that's it. I don't think I have anything else. I just need to tell you the Zoom. Oh, wait, Bobby?
We have our full moon tours.
Oh, yes. I'm sorry. The full moon tours. Once a month, we go up to the top of Lawson Tower. And then on full moon, we go about half hour before sunset. So you can watch the sunset and the moonrise. We've been sort of half and half on the weather, but it's a fun time because their trustees are up there. They talk to you about Lawson Tower and Thomas Lawson. And we have members of the South Shore Astronomical Society with telescopes. They talk about the next time. So you can find all that on our Facebook page. And I think that's about it. Again, I'm very happy to see people from here down because it's been a long haul. So thank you all for coming out. I know it's a holiday week, the Holy Week and all, but thank you for coming. We're very excited to have Art here, who has been postponed twice because of the pandemic. But Art has got a wonderful presentation. He's going to chat a little bit before he starts a little movie, and then we'll have a conversation at the end of the timing. And again, thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Is this going okay? Not good? Yeah, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Art Mulmore. I had the distinct pleasure of working with one of the greatest writers in New England, Edward Rowe Snow, for 20 years. I wasn't anything special, I was just one of his many helpers. But we didn't just like the writing about the sea, we loved it. And 4 years before his death, he had started a 98 book on the Boston Steam of Portland, but he was never able to find all the information to finish the book. And he said to me, if you ever find the rest of the stuff, or the rest of the information on the Boston Steam of Portland, will you please complete the book? So he left the title up to me, and I called it, and she shall have them all, because it went down with all hands. And Ed worked on it for 50 years, I worked on it another 30. So there's 80 years of research on this one book. If that isn't a world record, nothing is. So tonight we're going to show you the dive to the Portland. It's 28 miles off of Gloucester, and it's 500 feet down. And if it wasn't for guys like Frank Uriachi that helped John Fish and Ani Carr find the wreck, I would never have been able to complete the book. So it's people like them that made it happen for me. And when I got to see 11 hours of underwater video of the wreck, and the answers to how and why it sank were on the wreck. So I was able to finally complete the book after so long. Self-published on Amazon, because if you're you're a new writer, regular publishing companies won't give you the right time of day. So famous marine writers around the country told me to just go it on my own and self-publish it on Amazon, so that's what I did. And so far, it's sold 1,400 books. So it's somewhat of a success, but I wish it was 14,000 books, but it takes time. Yeah.
When was the wreck found?
The wreck was found in 1989.
Wow.
It was 91 years after it sank. Because they were looking for it off Cape Cod, where all the stuff washed up. The ship is sunk off Gloucester, and the debris is over 30 miles away on the beach in Truro. The bodies were washing up as far south as Chatham on the Cape. And John Fish plotted where all the bodies and debris came up, and Richard Lineberg, one of the top oceanographers from Woods Hole, was able to do a computer program, you'll see it tonight, on how they did it. It sank 12 hours earlier, it was here. It sank 10 hours earlier, it was here. 8 hours here, and 4 hours here. And they matched up the tracks that he did on the chart, and Richard has read the book and he loved it. And I had a little bit of help from Robert Ballard that found the Titanic. The Stellwagen Bank said they saw the stacks of the ship, and he told me one little secret: the stacks only last 65 years underwater. It did metal when they turned to dust and just collapsed. It's all the old steamers, the stacks are all missing because of the time that has passed. The thicker metal lasts underwater. You can see it from the superstructure and from the hull. But the stuff like the thin stuff like the smokestacks are gone. And so they all told me I was crazy when I said it wasn't the stacks. So we found out something. You'll see it in the DVD tonight. And this is part of the series called Science of the Deep. So these are available. These DVDs here are available from the Science Channel. You can purchase them yourself. So they're available from the Science Channel, and they're great. And I have permission to use the DVD from the people who filmed it. Make sure I got permission first. So without further ado, we'll start the program, and then I'll be able to answer some questions while you're happy.
Chillingly clear that one vessel faced a terror that overwhelmed all others. Fragments at first, then body after body drifted out of the night and stopped. Was it sudden? Was it painful? The mysterious fate of the paddle steamer Portland, with nearly 200 restless souls, has lingered, unresolved to this day. Three generations later, the extent of this tragedy can finally be revealed. As scientists take a pair of remote-operated vehicles with powerful lights and a high-definition camera to the depths of New England's most famous maritime disaster.
That's nice. That's a real nice image. Oh, the first, we haven't seen this before.
Few ports can claim to have netted as much living wealth in the sea as the fishing town of Gloucester, Massachusetts. Few have also lost so many to the darkness of the deep. This is the point of departure for the research vessel Connecticut. Ivor Babb, a biologist with the National Undersea Research Center, is co-leader of this expedition.
I'm hopeful that when we get down there today with 1,000 watts of light cascading onto that wreck, that it's just going to light it up and we'll say, there's the coral.
We want to look at this, we want to look at this, as sort of the priority deployment.
The mission is to survey the steamer Portland, a collaboration between the National Undersea Research Center and the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, or NOAA.
Is it possible to come in somewhere, in this zone?
Bruce Terrell is a maritime archaeologist for NOAA. His job is to assess and protect historic and cultural objects with the National Marine Sanctuaries.
This is the sponson, and it was, deck beams held it out, and the whole purpose was to protect the paddle wheel when the ship was in port, when it was in dock. When we're coming up with ROV here, we're rising up underneath it, and a lot of times we have to back out to see the actual paddle wheel being here.
Ben Kelly Haskell is the Maritime Heritage Coordinator of the Stellwagen Bank National Marine Sanctuary, where the wreck lies. He is the team's other co-leader.
So what we're considering today is approach from sort of this area over the RV, coming up and over the side, approaching the stacks.
We want to try and determine why the ship sank. Did it lose power? Did the main shaft between the two paddle wheels snap? We want to learn whether there are artifacts on the hull or on the main deck. And we want to learn about life in 1898 on a steamship.
A new generation of high-definition or HD cameras and lights are custom-mounted upon a remote-operated vehicle. This robot on a leash will be controlled from the surface. If all works as planned, the imagery flooding upwards to the ship will be far more detailed than anything ever witnessed in these waters.
Trying to develop optical systems to look at the wreck are extremely challenging. We need to have that optical approach to camera systems to really look at the details of the wreck to ensure that that's what we're looking at. In the case of working in these waters where the visibility is not very good, that work is even harder. Okay, all right.
Technicians, maritime archaeologists, and biologists, the vessel heads for Stellwagen Bank National Marine Sanctuary. Under the protection of NOAA, this 842 square mile area off the Massachusetts coast is known for its abundant fish resources and marine mammals, like humpback whales. These waters also contain another resource. Hundreds of shipwrecks rest below, in depths ranging from 200 to 500 feet.
Our mandate is to protect not only the natural resources of this special area, but also the heritage resources. New England has a long maritime tradition, and the Portland figures really strongly in that tradition.
The port is extremely important. It's considered to be, the Titanic of New England. It's a combination of the number of people who lost their lives, during that catastrophe, combined with the mystery that surrounded it for so long, the fact that we didn't know where the wreck was lying on the ocean floor, the fact that the debris was washing up on Cape Cod. So that it was unknown. There was no closure to that mystery.
There was a simple beginning to Portland's last passage. Nearly 200 people waved goodbye to friends and family off Boston's Indian Wharf. It was Saturday evening, the weekend after Thanksgiving in 1898. The families aboard expected to retire to the 168 elegant staterooms and wait the next morning for hot tea and the arrival in Portland, Maine. Coastal travel by steamer was common and popular. Over the previous 75 years, these ships had ferried millions of passengers along New England's many routes. It was the easiest way to travel, and the overnight trip to Maine cost only $1. Portland was only 8 years old. At 280 feet, the sleek white craft was one of the grandest in the steamer fleet. Behind twin smokestacks was the diamond-shaped walking beam, a derrick-like structure that transferred the steam engine's power to two giant side paddle wheels, pushing the boat along at a top speed of 13 knots. These wheels dipped into the water only a few feet. The ship's hull also rested lightly, reaching underwater a little more than 10 feet. The design worked well in the shallow rivers and protected harbors at either end of the voyage. But the shallow draft was less stable on a rough and exposed open sea. The steamer Portland left Boston Harbor that evening in 1898, and it never reached another port. Weeks, months, and years passed, decades of searching, but no one saw the ship again. Until the arrival of two persistent Cape Codders, Arnie Carr and John Fish, nearly a century later. John and Arnie are the principals of American underwater search and survey, with some specialized equipment and a keen interest in maritime history. They locate downed aircraft and ships that have been lost at sea.
We had an interest in looking for the Portland because it's one of the true maritime disasters in the region.
The Portland was a major event. It really devastated New England in 1898 and has been in New England folklore as a legend since, and remains a major event even today. The government did mount a search to try to locate the vessel. They did some fairly extensive wire sweeps, and they were unsuccessful in locating it.
When John and Arnie aren't employed to find sunken objects, they do it as a hobby. The tools of their trade, sleek torpedo-like devices, are called sonar towfish.
The ocean is an opaque substance that covers and blankets much of the Earth's surface, and for as long as history has been recorded, people haven't been able to accurately see what's there. And now the technology that's been developed just in the past 25 or 30 years, we're able to see great distances in very fine details of the seafloor. And it makes the job of what Arnie and I try to do much, much easier when we can map large areas.
New England was very dependent on shipping. Up and down the coast, shipping was the prime means of travel, prime means of sending cargo as well as passengers to the various locations. Hence, given the winter storms and the strange weather we have here, we've had tremendous numbers of shipwrecks here. I think we've cataloged over 6,000 shipwrecks. It just is a perfect place for disaster.
This is Scituate sonar, which is an underwater imaging device. It's very highly developed over the past several decades. It can consists of an electronics ball, which is inside here, and transducers, which emit the acoustic pulse, or the sound ping that we use to image the seafloor. And then it listens for a certain period of time to register the echoes coming from the seafloor and any objects that are on it or sticking up from it. And those are sent up an electromechanical cable up to a jet unit in a computer system in the network, so that we can register those returning signals and actually make a picture of what's on the bottom.
Yeah. Ready?
Can we hold the cable?
You're on the cable? Just go in the water.
This sophisticated underwater acoustic equipment offers small operations like theirs the capacity to scan vast tracts of the seafloor with incredible accuracy.
Are you going to take over, Tony?
I'm heading to that white buoy. Altitude of the fish up there?
About 12 meters.
Arnie pilots the boat, towing the sonar fish back and forth in a mowing the lawn pattern. With a network laptop, John monitors the images sent to the surface by the towfish below.
All right.
What's the line of fight?
Let's see it. Seeing waves, normal sizes, no targets. Right now I have boilers.
Port side?
Port side.
Yeah, the buoy's right there.
Okay, now we're crossing in the middle of the second boiler, third boiler.
30 feet below the boat, the towfish is passing over large steel boilers of a shipwreck.
This is a good shot, all the boilers, I can see them all. Yeah,
Its sonic sensors are collecting an acoustic imprint of their size and configuration.
Right here.
right.
The results often need the interpretation of a trained eye. But side scan technology allows remote collection of near photographic quality images.
Wow, that's pretty interesting.
For 6 years, John and Arnie systematically dragged their sonar fish around Massachusetts Bay in their hunt for the steamer Portland.
We knew from the research that we'd done and the historical reports that we'd studied that there was really nothing left of the Portland except her hull and machinery. We found dozens of shipwrecks in this area, but we studied all of them, photographed some of them, and were able to tell that none of them had engine, machinery, and boilers.
At times, we may have become discouraged, but it was temporary discouragement, and year after year, weekends, and whatever time we could amass, we would go out and continue to look.
They knew they needed to change their focus. With the expertise of Woods Hole oceanographic scientist Dick Lineberger, their big break came, not from the ocean, but the beach. And the historic storm that splintered Portland in 1898. Saturday, 8 a.m., November 26th. The first of the 2 daily weather forecasts was telegraphed from Washington to the Boston office. Unsettled weather. A low-pressure center over the Great Lakes beckoned to another off Georgia. By noon, they joined forces. A special advisory was dispatched. Nonetheless, by evening, Boston remained snowless, with excellent visibility, and a breeze described as light and serene. Aware of the forecast and of the calm local conditions, Portland's captain, Hollis Blanchard, cast off lines promptly at 7 p.m. Several vessels reported passing the outbound steamer as it headed northeast along the coast to Maine. For the first 25 miles, the shoreline would have offered some protection to any headwind and wind-driven waves. By then, however, the two lows had merged into the turn of the century's perfect storm. The wicked nor'easterly was about to catch Captain Blanchard and his passengers 1/4 of their way home. The gale would rage all night long.
One once, maybe 15 miles north of Boston, she rounded Cape Ann. She felt the full strength of the storm. And we know from further sightings later in the evening that Blanchard took her out in the middle of the day, unable to turn around because of the high seas. A vessel with the design of the Portland, you can never be turned around in high seas because if the sea is a beam or coming to the side of the vessel, the rolling and twisting of the ship could severely damage the paddle wheels, the propulsion system, and possibly even capsize her. The paddle wheels had paddle guards on the outside of them, but underneath the sides of the hull were structures called sponsons. These sponsons tend to increase the buoyancy during rolls to one side or the other. The captain knew that he had to keep her bow into the sea.
Two fishing schooners who were coming back to port saw the Portland leaving, could see it pitching and having a problem in maintaining steerage and way and showing some signs of distress in reaction to the building sea.
One of the biggest problems he had is he didn't know where he was. Could only guess. With no navigation equipment, no satellite navigation, no radios, he could only guess that he would stay in the middle of the bay and just ride the storm out.
Midnight, it was blowing 80, 90 miles an hour and snowing, visibility was low. And even if the ship was under full power, it would have been very uncomfortable. I think that anything that wasn't tied down to the ship would be flying. I think people would be sitting down, they would be getting sick, and they would be scared.
I'm sure that as Captain Hollis Blanchard really tried to maintain the vessel jogging into the sea, that he was overcome, probably the bow turned at one point.
And once it was broadside, the ship would roll violently, almost to the point of tipping over. Doors would be broken open, water would be penetrating the ship, and it would really be horrible.
It was probably a very slow process of sinking. Slow meaning probably several hours in which there was probably total panic.
Very uncomfortable, people would be scared to death.
Once enough of the ship came off, was beaten off by the seas, I think the end game might have come fairly quickly. It wasn't until 2 or 3 days later that Boston actually got the information that the Portland had come down. Whereas in the Provincetown on Sunday night, when the debris first came ashore, they knew instantly that no ship could survive having lost this much structure.
Stateroom doors and other gear from the upper saloon deck drifted many miles to shore, possibly with passengers and crew clinging in frozen embrace. The storm had devastated New England's coast. Houses were battered, roads vanished. Over 200 ships were lost or thrown onto the shore by pieces of straw. The disaster would come to be called the Portland Gate. At least 192 passengers and crew were believed to have boarded the ship in Boston, but only 36 bodies were recovered. The exact number who perished will never be known. The only passenger list went down with the ship. Portland's wheel and other beach finds would ultimately become the clues that led John and Arnie to the wreck. They recorded locations of 200 pieces of debris and nearly 40 bodies that had washed ashore from the steamer Portland.
We researched where every bit of flotsam came ashore and took that data to Dick Lambert, who was oceanographic, and processed it.
Dick Lineburner is an oceanographer who studies ocean circulation and currents. Shipwrecks are not typically part of his work, but like most who have heard the story of the steamer Portland, he became personally intrigued.
The ship disappeared. It left port, was seen once briefly, and disappeared. Nobody survived. And it was a mystery. And I think I was drawn to the tragedy and the mystery of trying to understand what actually happened. Well, I try to predict the track of something floating in the ocean. There's 4 influences on something floating. The first is the winds, the second is the tide, the third is the mean current, and the fourth is a slowly varying current, we sometimes call it a low-frequency current. And I would take those 4 components and add them together, and I would come out with a track for each piece of debris.
This chart was prepared by John Fish, and on this chart he's located all the debris that was found that was related to the sinking of the Portland. The first piece of debris that came ashore was a life jacket, and this was about 7:30 at night. And shortly after that, empty ice cream cans began to come ashore on the beach. By 9:30 at night, the majority of the wreckage, the doors, there were large timbers, the entire upper portion of the ship came ashore on this short stretch of beach right here. Also shown are the locations of various bodies of people that were on the Portland, and these came ashore all along the beach, all the way down to Chatham. This is a distance of about 30 or 40 miles.
At the turn of the century, 8 life-saving stations were perched along Cape Cod, where fragments of the Portland came ashore. They recorded the locations of their discoveries. Nearby, weather observations for this area were also recorded, a boon for Dick Lineburner's detective work.
And this was 1898. They had old instruments, but they recorded the wind speed and direction, which was very helpful to me.
Lineburner wrote a computer program that resolved all variables of drift in degree tracks of 1 hour. But how did he determine how many hours the bodies had drifted?
Here's an example of the track of a single piece of debris. And what was interesting, that on many of the bodies that came ashore, the watchers all said 9:30. They all stopped at 9:30. If it sank at 9:30 in the evening, it would have been close into the beach. And so I went on the premise that it sank 12 hours earlier at 9:30 in the morning. And so for the different debris tracks that I predicted them back to 9:30 in the morning.
When Lineburner reversed the debris track 12 hours, the search area was much farther north than anyone else had predicted.
And this is where I estimated the ship was located, right at this location right here.
So we actually started marching up Dick Lineburner's suggested flotsam path, locating more and more shipwrecks all the way. And it took us several years to examine all of those to determine which ones were not Portland and which one probably was.
At long last, John and Arnie found the steamer Portland. The year was 1989. In 2002, NOAA confirmed their find with side-scan sonar. One of the century-old mysteries, where Portland sunk, was solved. But what happened and what was left of the ship remained unknown. NOAA archaeologist Bruce Terrell remembers seeing that first ghostly sonar image of the steamer Portland. It haunts him still.
When we first ran sonar over this and got our first image of the Portland, we were all pretty well steeped in the story. but to find it so intact, sitting on an even hull, and to see that the A-frame and the stack sitting there, it was a hushed silence in the room. It was not the usual feeling of a scientific expedition. So, very touching. Basically, when you're looking at the side scan, you'll see that the hurricane deck and the saloon deck are gone. It's completely sheared off. To see so graphically what the last moments must have been like for the people on board. You can sense the hopelessness they must have felt. Here's the on deck.
The RV Connecticut has reached the station, directly over Pristine Report. Before the ROV's HD camera can be deployed, the crew launches its own side-scan sonar to scout the site below. They are collecting baseline data of the abandoned fishing nets that surround the wreck and could entangle the ROVs.
There is a lot of ghost gear or fishing nets that tangle on the wreck. It makes it quite a challenge for us to get the ROV in to film this. So we have to be very careful and move in slow and try to identify and map the ghost gear with sonar before we get the cameras in place.
All is now ready for the high-definition video equipment, but the operational timetable may soon change.
Northeast wind 15 to 20 miles an hour. Friday, showers, heavy at times in the afternoon. Breeze.
A weather forecast identifies a developing hurricane to the south, adding an impending sense of urgency to the crew's work.
This hurricane could really cause havoc with us. The weather forecast models say that it is going to turn and head north up the coast. It certainly is just a risk you take at this time of year. I'm hoping for the best.
The crew will have enough time for at least 2 days of diving before the full effects of Hurricane Isabel arrive. Not a moment to waste. The HD ROV is launched first. It carries its own sonar, 2 high-output HMI lights, the high-definition camera, and thrusters. It is tethered to an underwater teammate called ISIS, a secondary ROV which carries additional lighting. Underwater, ISIS also acts as a cable manager, dampening the bobbing effects of the vessel above and defining which part of the wreck can be imaged by the primary unit. Bruce Terrell and Ben Cowley-Haskell will monitor what the ROV is seeing, while a team of 3 will control its movement. These men must function like component parts of one technical creature, swimming 400 feet below their seats. It's the ultimate $1 million video game.
RV on bottom. The depth is 455 feet. We're on the sandy bottom.
What did that turn on?
You land on the segment, and then the pilot pans up with the camera, and you peer out into the darkness, and then they start to head towards the wreck, and you want to call into the video monitor because you want to get beyond that darkness. There's a real sense of anticipation because you know that you're the first human eyes to see this wreck after it went down.
Something on the right, sticking out, you see that? There's that chain. So this is the anchor, I think. Yep, there's the anchor. So we're at the bow. It's a net covering something. There's your anchor fluid. Okay, there we are. There's the bow.
I can't believe how narrow. That's like a knife edge.
Let's say 6 inches maybe. See the drift pins that is nailed in the dead wood, where the 20 planking's gone. It's where the plank rabbits in. Yeah, plank was missing there.
Beautiful anemones, sponges. We have a cusk over here hiding to the right side.
The first time we come upon a wreck, it's extremely exhilarating. We're explorers, we're seeing something for the first time. Ours are the first eyes that are being laid upon this cultural resource, this landmark on the face of the planet. I'm looking at it also as a scientist. I'm very interested in what is the condition of the wreck, what is living on the wreck now in terms of the biology that is associated with this habitat now.
Yeah, these are filled anemones, filter feeding animals actually, that look like flowers.
It was in a flower garden.
Beautiful. Gorgeous.
Very colorful sea life.
That's a great shot.
These wrecks have become an integral part of the undersea landscape, especially the old ones that are now over 100 years old. They've just become one with the environment down there. Fish have made them their homes, and marine life has settled on these wrecks, actually making them quite beautiful objects underwater now.
We're going to work our way down the ship on the port side, investigating things as we go along, like we're going to look down this staircase. We're going to see if there's anything on this deck. And then we're going to look here along the port side where the paddle box area is, very cautiously, mind you. A lot of nets on this wreck.
Whoa. Big fish.
This is that same one.
These lost nets represent a century of effort to catch the fish on Stillwagon Bay. They can easily catch an ROV. Sonar technician Alan Nas uses software to assign each pixel of the side scan image to a precise geographic position below the boat. The ROVs can now be flown with the software map to avoid obstacles, as well as with the visual information provided by the cameras crossing the territory itself. Flying by the map has been done by fighter pilots for some time, but Alan believes this is the first time the technique has been used on a shipwreck.
And here come the bits. Yeah.
So, where do you think we are?
If we're this bit, we can go inboard and possibly find the stairwell. If we're on, if it's this pairs of bits, then we're already after that. Twisted steam pipes are all over the deck here. Well, that's a cup. It's a cup. That's a ceramic cup.
That's the barber shaving cup.
Look at that. You see the handle right there.
Twist it up and then.
Look at that. It's like Dorothy's house in the Wizard of Oz. She's getting yanked off the foundation as it's left. All right, the hawse. I'm at the hawse. Can you tell what I'm thinking right now, Fred?
Craig Russell is the camera ROV pilot.
You're feeling pretty brave today, Craig. He's coming down the hole. You know those ones, dude? Excellent. Well, we know it's a road back between there. See the timbers.
Long ago, water entered this hole and sunk the ship. Craig takes a peek, but risks getting stuck if he goes too far. He continues down the port side.
See ghost gear.
This is exactly what we need to avoid. There's some nets sticking up from the mark on.
Lots and lots of gear.
Looks like it's still good iron.
Yeah, I see that. Hey, you only live once, right? It's insured, right, anywhere?
Hand back to the right.
Can we go back to the right? Right?
Nothing but the net.
a really bad area, we gotta do that fast.
You want me to come up on it?
No, you're fine, 350. We're in the clear. So no, we can't go down along this side.
Yeah,
Just answer that question for you.
that's why you're the captain. We're moving aft along the paddle guard.
If possible, Craig, it'd be great to go inboard of the paddle wheel space. Take a look and see if we can see the shaft.
Well, here's the flange here, I think. Yeah, once you get to the flange, if you can look inward and see if we can possibly follow the shaft. Okay.
There's a nice shot of the spokes coming out of the flange. You can see the curvature of the paddle flange. These are the spokes of the paddle wheel going out from the flange or the paddle hub out to the actual paddles. The paddles are what hits the water and propels the ship forward.
Actually, I think they're called buckets.
Buckets, paddle buckets.
I don't know why. So together there are 3 flanges.
Yeah.
If he can turn, go here, he's going to come right into the A-frame. So like an L2 there? Yeah. Okay, we have just come up to the chimney, which is a cast iron round tube pot, whatever you call it. And basically it's directing the ash and exhaust from the firebox out through the smokestack. The smokestack itself is gone.
This is good, so
Got overhang here. There's the top of the stack. Thank you, Craig. It narrows at the top, and you can see the collar that the actual stack would have been attached to. The smokestacks are all, this is just some kind of chimney or something. That's excellent. That's great. This is real nice image. Very helpful.
Are you comfortable turning to the right, Craig, and trying to take a look at the top of the walking beam, which is right behind us?
There's some more gear at work. Like on the other side. Yeah. See all the ink there. Yep, there's the top of the walk beam. Beautiful, beautiful. This is the peak of the walking beam. It's a beautiful shot.
This is a 20-ton piece of metal.
Yeah, cast iron. It's shaded with diamond. And each end is crank, and the middle is a pivot, attaches to 2 A-frame pieces. It moves up and down like this and transfers the energy from the engine to the cranks and runs the paddle wheel. I've never seen this before. We've had sonar images that suggested this was here, but this is really the first time we've set eyes on it. Finding out what happened to the engine, especially the connecting rod to the crank that runs the wheels, finding that rod is key to figuring out what happened to the engine, how it stopped. Well, that was it, man. That was the shot.
Unfortunately, Bruce's hope of learning why Portland's engine stopped will have to wait for another pass of the ROV.
There's some more gear at work. Are you seeing this? Nothing but me.
I'm getting around that.
Craig tries to avoid a hanging net and pipes, but the ROV does not budge.
What's the ship doing?
He engages thrusters, full astern. Still, worst nightmare comes true, the picture stops. The ship's heavy deck winch hauls in the ROV cable. Initial resistance gives way to a steady pull.
We were working very close to midships, and it appears we got tangled in an obstruction. We saw line, we saw pipes, we don't know what we might have entangled the ROV in, but the ISIS and the ROV are on the way up now, so we'll have to do a damage assessment and see how much we have to repair.
The equipment is clearly broken, but the crew is elated that no pieces have been lost to the wreck on the bottom.
This is everything, when everybody comes back. Ain't no have a nice day.
The crew determines that the only breakage was a bar holding the lights. They will attempt an overnight repair and hope that operations on the wreck of the steamer Portland can continue in the morning. By 6 a.m., the repaired light bar arrives, and the HDROV is seen again. The survey team has one more day to visit what remains of Portland. They hope to assess the forward deck that covers the crew quarters.
So what I'd like to do, we looked that way and I saw a little bit of it. If it's possible, I'd like to look from this direction and see if we can illuminate down in there and see if we can identify a winch.
Be aware that the swell moves the boat up and down considerably. And since the ISIS is just a dope on a rope, it moves with the motion of the ship, and it's therefore going to be swinging up and down a great deal.
The hurricane is turned away to the west, but its swelling sea could still arrive later this afternoon. For now, operations continue with a sharp eye for change. Today, the Gamma ROV will be piloted towards the deck winches and the crew quarters. Craig Bussell plans his course.
ROV on bottom, ready on wreck.
You see a green steam pipe running right on here.
Almost immediately, they come upon a steam release pipe. If the end of this pipe is bulbous, it will be one additional piece of evidence confirming that the wreck is the steamer Portland.
Thank you, Craig. Beautiful. It's a long brass pipe and it has bulges and all this too. It's the defining characteristic of steamboats at that time. It was usually mounted aft of the stacks and it was used to release excess steam. So we're at the bow. Okay, we've moved up over the very tip of the forward bow. Just move like this to cross that. Maybe that's the one issue. This is not deck here. Anybody have an idea? It's open for comment here.
I think it is a winch.
Yeah. This is the anchor winch. Oh yeah. Look at that. How many barrels are there?
Nice shot. Beautiful.
Okay, this is another first. We haven't seen this before either. And we're looking down. This would have been the berth area for the crew. We're right now looking into the forward stairwell that went down into the dining area and what we think was the crew quarters. Well, yeah, let's go in on this. Is that a bowl right there?
Teapot. There's a lantern right back.
Yeah, and then maybe we'll want to get close-ups on all three of these things.
Is that sheet and glass? It is.
Yeah, okay, that's a glass one in there. Yeah. That's nice, that's nice. Yeah, and you can see where the wrench would fit on. See the threads. Man, HD is. This is where the galley was, where the kitchen was. What is this? We're in the kitchen area right here. That's a tea table. Yeah, bunch of cups. They actually look at this salad.
Viewing these landmarks, these wrecks for the first time, we look at them from the perspective of what they are as cultural resources, but we can't help but think about the human element associated with every one of these wrecks. In the case of the Portland, we know that it was a tragedy of immense proportion.
With their mission complete, the Connecticut crew takes a moment to remember, once again, the unseen struggle that ended in this spot.
In memory of the 192 passengers and crew who died here, may this spot forever be a sanctuary for their souls.
Well, Portland site is a large grave, and we felt very strongly that it should be protected and should be not have many divers visiting it.
It's illegal to the National Sanctuaries Act to disturb, remove, or harm historic resources in the sanctuary. Now that we've imaged some of these artifacts, and it's become clear how delicate they are and how delicate the wreck is because it's slowly deteriorating, we simply need to do everything we can to protect this irreplaceable resource.
To protect the remains of the steamer Portland, NOAA is keeping its exact location a secret. The Portland tragedy did lead to changes for the coastal ferries. For greater stability, stern propellers replaced side paddle wheels. The uncertainty of exactly how many lost their lives led to the reformed practice of keeping duplicate lists of passengers ashore. The distance between Portland's final journey, so long ago, and the blue skies above will never go away. But that distance has lessened with what this survey has seen. A future generation of small ROVs may be able to travel below decks and determine the cause of Portland's demise. Until then, Portland rests.
keeping Noah's wishes, I didn't give the exact depth on the exact location of the book either. But in 2008, the divers reached the wreck 500 feet down.
Were they
Special
given permission to? Were the divers, the founders, given permission to dive on it?
No, but they couldn't. They didn't have a recompression tank or anything. They had, each of them had 5 tanks. And it's pitch black down there. After 350 feet, you look up and you can't see light at all. They had 600 foot lights in floating at 500 feet. But they were the only ones to visit the wreck because the dive is so technical and so dangerous. And they didn't have a recompression chamber with them either. It's 15 minutes down, 15 minutes on the wreck, and 3.5 hours decompressing coming back out. And I worked on an engine room on my second destroyer in the Navy, and they call them the thing with chimneys for the boilers. I said, they're not called chimneys, they're called uptakes. He said, how did you know that? I said, we had to work around them the whole time on my destroyer. So you have to know a little bit of marine technology to do it. And I said, show me the stacks, and they're 5 feet across. They said, these stacks were only 2 feet across. And then you get up the top of the thing, and there's two flanges where the stacks used to be. And they're all scratching their head, and they called me crazy when I first saw the stacks. I first told them they weren't the stacks. And I said, one of the guys said, I'll teach you to call them crazy. So you have to stick to your guns no matter what happens. But the scientists can be very high and mighty sometimes, and I think nobody else knows anything but them. Right, Frank? Yes, sir.
Has anybody gone back there and done a more detailed scanning of it to see what happened?
They go back about every 2 or 3 years, yeah. And they had small ROVs last time, but they told me they hadn't found anything new yet. But by watching that 11 hours of video, I could find that it never capsized. So that shows how it sank. It got sideways to the seas when the top got ripped off, right, when they lost steering and everything. And the ship went way over at about a 35-degree angle. All the cups and saucers spilled out of the cabinets all over the deck. And then it went back down, got dirty the next downward, and it pushed it under. And those cups are still on the deck. If it capsized, there wouldn't be any cups on the deck at all. Bingo! Yes, sir.
What was the cruising speed of that boat? What was its fuel?
About 13 miles an hour, and the fuel was low. Yep. But there was a very luxurious way to travel because the trains were clock all the time and banging and clanging, and the steamboats rode nice and
It was a scheduled run from December.
The captain was, the normal time to leave was 7 p.m. and the head of the line advised the captain to suggested that he waited till 9 p.m. to see what the weather was, but he never made it in order. So he wanted to give the time to the his call.
That's why he didn't get out there in December.
Yeah, when you get 100 mile an hour winds, 40-foot waves, 0-degree temperatures, it's almost unsurvivable. The upper works drifted all the way across Massachusetts Bay and ended up in the beach in Truro. That's why nobody could find it, because they were looking off of the Cape for the wreck.
Great story. And Evan Grove started?
Yes. There was his whole life thing to find out what it was and so forth. And his best wish was to rebuild the grave of the port when they found it.
Which you did?
That's what I did for him, yes. It was the best $25 I ever spent. So if anybody else doesn't have any questions, I'll be doing book signing down back. The books are $21. I have to pay sales tax.